what's up guys, it's T-Bone here. Welcome back to another episode of playing Legendary Game of Heroes. I'm going to showcase some deck ideas in today's episode, and as you can see, I did not invest in this week's event deck since I already have a strong Dark Slayer team and I'm saving up gems at the moment. I did get the relic at tier 2 since it's a valuable investment. Since I don't have many cards for the event, I'll be showing a variety of decks this time and talk about how they work. We'll start with the deck that I'm currently using, the Endless Torment deck. This is currently one of the strongest deck types, so if you're looking to invest in a deck, this is the style that I would recommend. The one limitation for this deck is the requirement for cards that can generate Power Gem 4s, so that does need to be taken into account. I'm using Wasteland Spectre and Crystal Phoenix that generates 2 Power Gem 4s each, and power up Hell and Soul Reaper. I'm able to fill up the board with Power Gems and deal 8.5 billion damage on turn 2. In Slayers, this allows you to quickly go through the bosses and move on to the next one, so I really like it. Next, we're going to use a deck that includes Mama Legba, the Master Collection card. Narfunk is one of the collection heroes and he dispels Gem Silence. Keep in mind that in a Slayer event, you no longer need a Warden card to guarantee dispels, so you can use more cards to deal with the debuffs. I'm also using 3 copies of the other collection hero, Nighthawk. I have 3 of these cards, so I'm using them all to take advantage of the damage boost. We'll be taking on an Eternal Guild boss with 25 billion health. This deck is pretty straightforward to play. I have it set up so that the activation order goes from right to left. Narfunk does deal nuke damage each turn, but it does not do very much, so you'll be dealing damage from making Power Gem swaps. With 3 Nighthawks on the team that all generate Dren Intensity, it only takes a few turns before they fill up the board. I activate them all at 100 Dren Intensity, which is not quite enough to fill the board yet, but does deal about 2 billion damage on the first hit. Mama Legba actually works like a support card in this scenario, by being the only Power Gem spawner in the deck. Note that she is not in the leader position, and she's not boosted by Nighthawk, so I'm not really taking advantage of her 13 times bonus. In this particular case, I'm balancing out the damage over multiple cards instead of focusing on one card, but you can play around with the configuration. We'll skip ahead to the end of the fight. You would simply activate all the cards every 3 turns and swap Power Gems. For the last hit, since Mystic Intensity is at 195, we created 4 columns of Power Gems that all get converted to Dark Power Gems by Nighthawk, and the team deals a total of 8 billion damage and takes out the boss with plenty of time remaining. Mama Legba and Ushapti both boost attack if the entire board is converted to rainbow boards, which means you can actually use the cards from the Amy deck. So what I'm showing here is an example of how you can get some quick damage boost if you have a limited number of event cards like I do. I'm using 1 Amy and 1 Daniil from the anniversary event, and if you don't have Mama Legba, using Ushapti would work as well. Just make sure to put Madame Jean as the lead card. Leifer is another card that dispels Gem Silence, and he also heals, which makes him one of the most useful cards in this event, and that's why I have him in this deck. The challenge with this setup is now you have to match both dark and light gems, so it might take a couple of turns to get them both charged up. Once the battle skills are charged, when you activate them again from right to left, you'll see that there are 3 attack boosts. The damage from the first attack is around 2.6 billion, so it's not quite enough to take the boss out just yet. Unfortunately, Amy and Daniil only boost their own class, so Mama Legba's boost is the only one that will be helpful. But the nice thing is that you're getting the 150% attack boost without needing to really get high Mystic Intensity to do so. In this case, waiting a few more turns for Madame Jean to have the ability to convert a few more Dark Gems would have made it possible to take out the boss in one shot. For this next team, I'm using another card that dispels Gem Silence, Kuma from the Dark Fable Slayer event. This deck consists of Kuma, Nighthawk, Mama Legba, Madame Jean, and Makwa. Nighthawk does give a little heal as well, so this is a good team against the guild boss. Makwa as a gem spawner is not quite as good as Nighthawk since it only spawns 5 gems at a time, so if you have other options, I would recommend using them instead. One of the benefits is that Kuma boosts Fable attack based on Fable intensity, so you can increase Makwa's damage output. Another thing to note here is that even though Nighthawk is not boosted by Mama Legba's leader skill, since she has a 10 times damage bonus, she can still deal really nice damage on her own. With this particular setup, the first attack deals just enough damage to take out the guild boss in one shot. Since we got a Mystic Relic today, I wanted to try one of the Mystic teams I really enjoyed when it first came out, the Haroon deck. I decided to try the deck out against a Cobalt guild boss to see how much damage I could deal. I actually have 3 copies of Haroon, which would create 1 Power Gem Force for every 100 Mystic Intensity, but I decided to run with 2 of them and use 2 Ophrah, which creates Earth Gems on every attack and also create additional Mystic Intensity. Her battle skill grants other Mystic cards to also create Earth Gems on attack so that I could fill the board with Earth Gems. One of the challenges with this deck is that despite the fact it generates Power Gem Force, it does have capped damage output, and with only 2 Haroons, 20 seconds is still too short for the team to do anything. This deck does not do enough damage, so it wouldn't really work well as a go-to for me, but I did still want to showcase it to answer the question of how it might do. I pushed the intensity count to 800, and was still only able to deal 6 billion damage, which was a little disappointing. Having failed to do good damage with the Haroon deck, I decided to try out the last Fire Slayer deck from Halloween and decided to put Thothan as a card that dispels Gem Silence. The Baleful Bride and Pumpkin Queen are both good cards to provide heal, so I've got my bases covered there. I covered the way to play this deck quite a bit in its event, so I won't go into too much detail here, and instead will just show each hit and show the amount of damage it's able to deal. The first hit was about 30 billion, and was already able to take the remaining health of the boss down by 1/3. For the next attack, the intensity is close to maximum of 350, so with more higher level power gems, the damage goes up to 49 billion, and we're smooth sailing for the final hit, which was for the same amount to easily take out the boss. I mentioned in the previous event that the boost to the human cards from Dynamite Dougal and Iron Spine will work well in a Slayer event, so I wanted to showcase this. I have 2 copies of Tyra, which are relatively old cards now that are gem spawners, and I have Leifer once again as a healer and Gem Silence Dispeller. The objective here is pretty simple. I wanted to see how much damage I could deal given enough intensity, so this is a one-shot style play. The general playstyle is still similar to its event though. I do try to save as many of the blue power gems as possible because it's also the source of my damage output once Tyra converts them to dark power gems. At intensity 325 is when I decide to go for it, and with 16 total power gems, there aren't a lot, but I'm still able to deal 20 billion per card using old cards with much lower power. As the intensity goes higher, I expect that it can reach close to 100 billion per card. For the final team that I'm going to show, this is a deck that you can play as if you're up against a Legend Trial boss. We're up against Infernal Aline, and I'm using a similar deck that I showcased before when taking down Rilka. I have Madame Jean as the card to dispel Judgment, 2 copies of Nighthawk for Gem Spawn and Heal, Mondo Nighthill as the nuke damage dealer, and Nightblood Servant, which is a 2-star card that you can farm in the campaign. She would generate 3 heart gems as her battle skill and help stop the clock. The fight is about 10 minutes in total, and instead of cutting out the fights, I thought I'll let this run in its entirety in higher speed so you can see the journey to taking down this guild boss. That's all for this episode. I decided to try something different this time. Not all the decks are fully budget friendly and use only cards from this deck, but hopefully what I did show is interesting and helpful and helps you draw ideas for what you could do in this event. Again, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of the video and I'll see you next time. Take care.